Say that Dr. Kittner just did a very nice introduction, welcoming and talking about the fact that working with inhibited learners is something we all work with. So, as we were just chatting before we got started, and as we had an opportunity to chat at lunch, and that is, we could probably have semester courses about inhibition and how to overcome inhibition. And of course, inhibition is as individual as the people that are in our classrooms. But I hope today to provide for some 3 practical not only activities, but grounds for activities that will help, that have come from my experience as a language teacher. I have been a teacher of French, Spanish, and at least to some extent Russian in the after-school programs at least, in Campbell County schools here in Virginia for many years. And it's a great pleasure to be with all of you all around the state. It's a very exciting initiative that Dick Kittner has here as far as getting these workshops to be broadcast. I also am not going to be able, because he's now hooked up to a series of headphones, but I'd like to point out that we have a young man here named Joey, who is I'm going to be signaling to change the slides so that we have a nice flow here, okay? So, I believe that what we have here are, can we raise the volume a bit? It was the comment here. Joey, did you see that? Okay. So he's putting it up as much as he can, and I'll try to speak as clearly as I can, and you just keep telling us how to adjust, okay? I understand that there are teachers of Spanish, and French, and German, and is there an Italian teacher? Are there Japanese teachers? Who do we have here at the Washington and Lee campus? Spanish? Spanish, okay. And Japanese. Great. Thank you very much for that. Excellent. And that was Joey, by the way, that just went by. So now you know who we've got working with, okay? And how about we have college professors and we have teachers of high school, if I understand correctly. How about folks that are in middle school or elementary school? Do we have any middle school or elementary school people in the audience?
Middle school. Middle
school here? Great. All right. That's right. It's whole middle school as far as the host. Fantastic. Along with, thank you, excellent. Along with the things that you should have in front of you, you should have some paper. You should have something to write with, because we'll have a few activities that we'll be writing together. I also hope that you have the handout. Do you have the handout? Okay. I believe in this particular site that Dr. Kittner is getting it right now. Could you let me know, those of you that are out there in the other areas, if you have the handout? It should be a 12-page handout. I would ask you, when you do get the handout, to not read it right now, okay? The design of that handout is I will allude to it about 2 or 3 times for specific things to look at, but otherwise, the idea of this handout is to take it home, be able to read through what you've experienced, and get even more detail so that we can talk about some global issues that I believe will be especially effective for us as educators, and then to take a look at some of those details when we go away. Sound good? Sound good? Hope so. How about that? FLAVA does not. Okay, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do is I'm going to continue to work and see whether or not your administrator that's on site, okay, has the copy that Dr. Kittner sent out as a PDF. Okay, we'll see if you can get that. I also arranged this so you will be able to see everything we're working with, okay? And therefore, you'll be able to do the activity with only one exception if you have the handout. So you might have to hang in with me there if FLAVA doesn't have it by the time we get done. Okay? All right. Pop the button. All right, and take a look at this little fella here. Okay, when we talk about language and we're talking about motivation, we talk about the earliest behavior of human beings. One of the things that we want to make sure we understand today is there is nothing more human than language. And therefore, the question that I have posited at the top of that handout, the question that we might even come in together with here today is, so why wouldn't somebody be motivated? After all, language is the most natural of behaviors. So, and we started at the very earliest. So if Joey, if you could go ahead and show us at least a little baby, if not the little baby. I'm going to make it so everybody can hear this. Baby Dunya. Little baby Dunya, by the way, comes from a Slavic culture. I didn't pick him because he was Slavic, but just because, well, I like that. Take a look at this little baby. Cheek tight. Read, read. This is Croatian. All right, that was Baby Dunya, and yeah, that was Croatian. Although the baby wasn't speaking anything, I hope you could tell that, right? Oh, I got to turn the transmitter on. Excellent. Yeah, that was Croatian. Although the baby wasn't speaking anything, mind you, but the intonation was perfect. Now, as we think about Baby Dunya for just a second, let's contemplate over what we just saw, because we saw something that was funny. The father certainly thought it was funny, was having a good time with it. But on top of it, we saw a lot of interesting behaviors going on. If you can advance that to the next slide. First of all, what we saw was a child that was learning to bond with the father, okay? The more that father responded, the more that baby kept reading. Of course, intonation patterns with what it already picked up, and it already picked that up in the uterus. But on top of that, you may have seen some of the studies that show that as far as understanding the phonemes of the language, we actually begin to pare away, to cut off, okay, those phonemes that we don't need at the age of 10 months. 10 months. So this baby is well on the way to being a speaker of a Slavic language and not of, say, Chinese just by intonation alone. But on top of that, what was happening was that baby is bonding with the parent, okay? The parent is also trying to figure out how to communicate with the baby, okay? There's any number of books, just like the one I've got pictured up here, Why Is My Baby Crying, okay? How do we communicate with this little thing? There is a mutual desire to connect, because the first aspects of what language is all about is survival and belonging. Survival and belonging. I'm starting that when talking about here about the inhibited learner, because we understand the nature of language and we share it with our students in our own ways in our classrooms. We help students to understand how they can forgive themselves for some of the things that have brought on the inhibition, rather than trying to force their way out of it or be cajoled out of it. So the first thing to understand is that survival and belonging is the rationale for language. The baby will not survive if it doesn't learn how to speak to the parent. And it wants to be connected. It is absolutely essential to do that. Now, what has happened to the language as time goes on? Okay, Joey, thank you. Well, languages from the very beginning. We have people that have spoken languages as they communicated in order to accomplish tasks together. So their survival was, for example, trade and commerce. People got together, learned different languages in order to accomplish their survival there. Trade goes to other countries, people go to other countries, and we know the kinds of languages that have come through either people deciding to trade or being forced to do things like when captured in slavery and brought to other places where the language was unknown, surviving by learning the language so as to be able to continue to live in this new place to which they were brought or to which they have traveled. Okay? Joey? Thank you. So, as we go all over the world, the ability to speak the language is based on the survival and the accomplishment of our personal tasks. Okay? In today's world, we can continue that. International business. And in fact, this is one of the ways that we help our students to understand where they might be connecting their languages. Thank goodness for the tools of modern digital communication, because we have returned, if you will, to the ancient trade routes that only a few could go on. Still right now, I believe with all my heart, coming from an area that, teaching in Campbell County, which is a fairly rural area, where students don't necessarily believe that they're going to be involved in international business. Thank goodness, digital, I think, will begin to convince them otherwise. But the fact is that international connections for trade and survival have been one way that we get an understanding of how language works. Alrighty? Similarly, we are working against some history, my friends, as teachers, because of the way that languages are approached. Back in the ancient days, very few people went to school. So these young men, and they were young men, sitting at the feet of their tutors, could learn languages, okay, because either they were likely to go traveling, or because they were the upper class, someone was likely to come and see them. Very limited number of people. With the invention of the printing press, thank goodness for it, okay, now language placed in images was widely distributed and general education came into being. So now it is expected that, at least our goal is, that societies will be literate from the very beginning. All children will learn to read, all children will learn to study, and all children will be able to learn a language, even though what's happened is we have now universalized the experience of language learning, but we haven't universalized the experience of every student having to travel to, or be connected to the larger world. I'm delighted we have universal education. Bravo, okay? But the fact is that we don't have the same kind of impetus as we had in the earliest years of our working with languages. So, survival, belonging, and competency are the three items that are the key nature of what language is all about. Students need to be able to survive as children, as babies. Survive, belong to a family, and feel competent to be able to accomplish their goals. And if we're fortunate and have met those needs, then we can become creative. Indeed, the words that we speak in the languages are the tip of the iceberg, as this PDK image shows. Words come first, but then we go down all the way to empathy. So the words are just touching on what we are as human beings, most of it being below. All right, the next slide, if you would, please. But our culture here in the teaching realm is quite different from the culture that, say, ancient people would be, or those when we were talking about the kinds of belonging that earlier cultures did. For example, our culture is one of grades. Grades are, how can we put this? Let's be very careful. Rather than inviting students in, grades are punitive. There's nothing, I mean, for some students, grades are rewarding. And for many of those of you that are listening, and those are here, and for many of us that are language teachers, we have been able to, indeed, survive and thrive in a language-speaking environment. That's why we're here. But for many students, language is yet another place where grades are the punitive aspect. They're trying to survive, and we put a grade on it. And I think all of us can have stories about how we feel when we give that first grade out, okay? So our culture is evaluation. And another part of our culture is that we level people, including arbitrarily dividing our language study into a series of years where we are to be accomplishing something. Again, I'm part of this system. I've thrived in it. I've helped students, I hope, to thrive in it. I'm not saying bad things, but this is the culture we're in. It does not have that same kind of sense of survival, belonging, and competency that we see when we're learning our first language. Okay? Next slide, if you would, please. So our challenge for today is, thank you, to create an opportunity for language learning to connect students and help them to belong and survive, even though they are surviving very well without our language so far. Thank you very much. They already know a language. Probably, and for most of us that are listening today, English, okay? They're surviving, and they're belonging. And now we've brought them into an environment in which we're saying to them, learn something as if you needed to survive and needed to belong, okay? And on top of it, we're going to grade you. All right? Next slide, next part. They already have a tool. One of the things that we're not going to address so much today, but one of the things that helps us to understand how to motivate students is that students already have a tool. And for most of them, this tool is English. Next. We're going to give them a new tool, helping them to understand that instead of working with language as a topic, they're going to work with language as a tool. Can help to motivate them to understand that they already have a tool in their toolbox. They are not incompetent. They have already succeeded. They are already there. When students come into a foreign language class, my friends, and language is taught as a topic, what will happen is students, help me to understand if you feel, speak more clearly into the mic, you betcha. I'll turn myself this way, move my sweater. How about that? You let me know, again, if you're doing that. Thank you, Lisa. That when we bring students into a classroom, that those students that have already succeeded in other academic areas are probably feeling that they're going to succeed in language, even if they're a bit frightened about it. And those that have not succeeded in other academic areas may be excited about the concept, but may already be feeling that they cannot be perfect at it. And in addition, we have, I think especially in this country, because of the nature of the way our country is broad and not always connected internationally, that we have sometimes an unrealistic sense of how fast we're going to learn language. Don't you think that's true? I think especially, I don't know about college students, honestly, because I haven't taught at the college level. But for high schoolers, they're trying to figure out why they're not fluent in the language by the end of the first year. I mean, they've had it for a whole year, haven't they? So the idea that somehow they're supposed to be fluent. If we come at it from language being another tool rather than a topic per se, we can help them to learn what's going on. So, next slide, please. Snakes, heights, and foreign languages. Let's take a look at what a university student from Texas said. Joey? Isn't it nice to know we're in the same range as snakes, my friend, as far as bringing the joy of learning, okay? Public speaking. I have heard that people are more afraid of public speaking sometimes than death, which really kind of freaks me out, but that could be true. But look at this university sophomore is even more convinced that foreign languages are worse than public speaking. That's pretty bad. If we can sensitize ourselves to that when students walk in the room, that helps. All right? We're going to be taking a look at activities to address inhibition today. I want to set the stage for the fact that inhibition happens. So let's take a look. First, we're going to address inhibition by setting the stage to understand how the body is part of language. When we can bring the learning of language to the level of the body, it helps to, and I think I may have already used this phrase, come on in, my friends. We have some students here at Washington and Lee that have just come in, so delighted to welcome them. When we bring in the nature of the body, everyone, it comes to more of a level playing field. I think I used that term already, but I'll repeat it. We want to give an activity that helps students to see that language is natural and they can succeed at it. And you'll want a handout, okay? So make sure you get a handout. Next, language is about the mind. It's an intellectual pursuit, and we're going to have some fun with the language, and that fun, that working with the language as an intellectual pursuit, will help our students to understand that they can use their adult minds as well as their physical bodies. They are adult learners, they're not babies, so we don't want to treat them as babies, but we want to get them in touch with both of these important parts. And the next one, we want to connect them. So the third type of activity, or the activity base for today, will be taking the social aspects. Again, survival, competency, belonging. We want to make sure all three of those are addressed because that's the very nature of language itself. We want to help the inhibited language learner to really get a grasp on how they can work with it. So, let's take a look at something. All right. Here's an old furry starry, toiling at her warts. Warts welcher alter girdle different from her once interregional virgin. Wants ponder term, der lift a ladle go, on her itch of her lodge dock florist. Disc ladle go, orphan worry, putty ladle rat hut. And for disc raisin, pimple calder, ladle rat rotten hut. Wan moaning, ladle rat rotten hut's murder calder inset. Ladle rat rotten hut, grammars seeking bet. Tick disc basking to her cordage of her groin murder, who lifts on her utter itch of her florist. Shake her leg, done stop her laundry road, and yonder nor sorghum stenches stop her torque wet strainers. Hoe cake murder, resplendent little gull, ticking little basking stuttered oft. On her road to her cordage or for groin murder, ladle rat rotten hut, mitten anomalous woof. Wail, 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 said her wicked woof. Evanescent ladle rat rotten hut, where's o'er putty little gull going with her ladle basking? Armor going to her groin murders, reprisal ladle gull, grammar seeking bet. Armor tickle arson burden barter and sugar cockles. Ho ho, high for blessing woke, said her wicked woof. Butter tot tomb shelf. Oil ticker shirt court to her cordage off her groin murder. Oil ketchup wetter letter and then oh bore. So the wicked woof took her shirt court to her cordage off her groin murder. When a raft at her cordage, picketed her widow. Sorrow poor old worming worse lying in her bed. In her flesh, disc abdominal woof lipped on her batting at her up. Zany pool dawn a groin murder's nut cup and nut gun and curdle dope in her bed. In her ladle wall, ladle rat rotten hut, a raft at her cordage, and rancor dough ball. Comb ink, sweat hard, said her wicked wolf, disgracing his verse. Ladle rat rotten hut, entity bedroom, stud by her groin murder's bed. Oh, grammar! Water bag, icy gut, a nervous sore suture bag ice. But her lucky chew whiff, said her wicked wolf, with her wicked small. Oh, grammar! Water bag noisy gut, a nervous sore suture anomalous prognosis. Oh, grammar! Water bag mousy gut, a nervous sore suture bag mouse. Days worry unfortunate gulls less warts. Oil off her sodden, thrown off her carvers, sprinkling on her bet. Disc curl, and Thursday woof, ceased poor ladle rat rotten hut garbled erupt. Merle, yonder nor circumstances, stopper torque wet strainers. That is in your handout. Take a look at page 10, please, okay? That particular thing is designed to, right now, what I'd like you to do is turn to a partner, okay, find a person sitting next to you, and take a look at Ladle Rat Rotten Hut on page 10, okay, and I'd like you to read it out to each other. Go ahead and take a few minutes to read it to each other. Sit down and just enjoy that, and let me know how it goes. I'll just stand here and stare into the camera for a few minutes. Go ahead, read it out loud to each other is the trick.
Okay. Once upon a time, that was the plan of going home. Was the image corded on each
Once upon a time. Is there music voice itself? There were still
racing people called their ladder grass rotted hops.
Impressive. Impressive.
Ladle rat rotted hops, mother called them insects. Rotten crop, everything that
So how's it going out there? Are you able to read it fluently? Over here we have a Grandma's sick in bed. Indeed it is. You got that right. How hard or easy is it to read this out loud in a way like you're telling a story? Is it very hard? People here are saying very hard. What are you experiencing out there? Give me some feedback there as you type, okay? Thank you. Why do you think it's so difficult? While people are typing their responses and while you're thinking out there. What made it difficult, do you think?
It's unfamiliar.
Pardon me? It's unfamiliar.
I don't belong.
Thank you for
You would never survive in this culture. Are you inhibited now? Oh my goodness. Are you intimidated? It's a little intimidating to try to read it back yourself, isn't it? Did you enjoy it while I was telling it?
yeah.
Yeah. Now the writing that's up here, you all see, of course, the words connect in a sense that has meaning for us. You recognize that if you take this document and you copy it yourself, and I can send it, well, I do have all of this electronically, so you can have whatever you like. But if you ever copy and paste this into a document, they do not connect. Right, okay, I see what you're saying. The words have meaning, but connected they don't seem to have meaning, especially when you try to read them out loud and you're reading each word as it appears. What happens here is this is a language which was developed by, as you see down at the bottom, this man's name is Howard L. Chase. He wrote back actually in the 1940s, and this was published in 1956. There's a whole book at it. If you can pop the next slide, please, Joey. These are from Anguish Languish, okay? These are furry tales and noisier rams, okay? Now the idea here that he was a man who was a brilliant linguist, also a French speaker, and he put together, if you copy and paste this, actually is what I was saying, you'll find that you will get a grammar check all over the place, but you won't get any spell check, because every one of these words is an actual English word. It's not even necessarily the homophone. It is a word that is placed in such a way that when the complete sentence is said, that the flow of the language, the sounds of the consonant and the vowels together makes sense, okay? So, for example, grammar, seeking, bet, armor, tickle, arson, burden, barter, and sugar cockles, okay? That doesn't sound exactly like bread and butter and sugar cookies, okay? But it's close enough that you know approximately what's going on. And another thing is you have the cultural background. Most of you know the story of Little Red Riding Hood. When my students are getting discouraged about 3/4 of the way through level 1, I pull this out. I do this for them because before about the second half of level 1 or into level 2, the students don't even know what's going on. You knew what was going on because you are language people. You've internalized listening through to the possibilities that the language is saying something to you beyond the words themselves. So you relaxed into it and you got it. Early learner students are not getting this, and this is a really good experiment to do with them because it gets you to see that what they're doing is they're paying attention to everything in such detail that the individual words are interfering, we know this already, with the complete flow of the language. Sensitizing ourselves to that is this exercise. When you read this back to yourself, try to read this back to yourself, you realize how difficult it can be. Okay, let's pop the title for the next thing there, Joey. This happens to be, again, Ladle Rat Rotten Hut. Pop it again. Here we have, my friends, Mary Hatter Ladle Limb. All right? Okay, once you read that loud with me, go.
Mary Hatter
Ladle Limb. Do it again.
Mary Hatter Ladle.
I hope that you guys out there are doing this together in the group because I'm going to come at you, okay? Come at you if you're not. Ready? Let's do it again. Mary Hatter Ladle Limb. Now, say it like you're going to say it like it's a nursery rhyme.
Mary Hatter Ladle.
Well, you see, already got. That's where the practice comes in. By the way, this particular thing, some of you out there who know me already knew that I knew this thing. It took me about 15 years of doing this in the shower every night, okay, to get it that fluent. Okay, let's see you do this poem. Ready? Go ahead, Joey. All right, do this with a partner, and take a minute to do this, and then we'll recite it together, okay? Do it with a partner for about a minute.
Mary Hatter
Esta es una copa de algo. Words white as snow.
Okay, so far so good? All right, you're enjoying this one? Okay. All right, let's, how are you doing out there? Are you enjoying the Mary Hatter Ladle Limb? Okay, good. Somebody's typing out there. Let me know. How's the flow? Yeah, English really stinks. That's great. That's something, isn't it? Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? And let's talk about inhibition, but let's have some fun together. And again, when we play at things like this together, when everybody is having trouble together, then we can all enjoy it together. Once in a while, we have to do that for each other, for our students. Ready? Mary Hatter Ladle Limb, its fleas were white as snow. And everywhere did Mary win, door limb were sure to gore. Okay, this is one of the easiest ones in the book. Okay, now the book is out of print, but you know, you can kind of. But there are all sorts of websites. If this happened to intrigue you, type in Anguish Languish Chase, and it'll come up, and you'll hear people reciting it all over the place. Have fun with it. Center Alley and the Wacked Staub Cisterns is also a good one. This is linguistic inhibition, okay? Try stumbling over this. Let me talk to you about some other kind of inhibition. Are you ready? When I was 15, I was an extremely, I mean painfully shy human being. Painfully shy. All right? So, if we can go to the next slide there, Joey. So, I went for the first time to Croatia, the land of my father's birth. I did not know the language. I made a fool out of myself as soon as I walked off the ferry boat, okay, attempting to use a little bit of Russian that I had learned in 9th grade, and having a complete failure because it had absolutely nothing to do with anything that my cousin knew. So I already was feeling down in the dumps, okay? So I went with my parents to the big city, and it was their anniversary. And I wanted so much, as the pleasing only child, to get an anniversary gift for my parents. So I said, I'll see you, I'm going to walk around for a while. But I had practiced the following phrase, I'm only looking, because I was painfully shy. I didn't want anybody to interrupt me. I didn't want to talk, I didn't want to do anything, I'd already embarrassed myself anyway, okay? So I practiced, all right? So I go into the first store, which I wanted to get some crystal. I go into the first store, I see some stuff, and then the man comes out of the back. Oh my gosh, my stomach's turning the flips. So I've practiced, so I go, Samo Glada. Well, he stops in his tracks. his shoulders fly back, his eyes fly up, and I'm thinking, see, I spoke in Croatian, but I look like an American. I've surprised him, because then he stopped, he turned around, and he left me alone. Just what I wanted. He's so excited. I didn't find what I wanted in that store, though. So I went to the next store. I walked in. I was feeling a little better now. The guy comes out of the back. I say, Samogladam. He leaves me alone. Same reaction. It was awesome. I went to 4 stores. Same thing. Samogladam. They left me alone. Feeling better. 5th store, I found what I wanted. All sorts of sign language. He wraps it up. That night, I take it, present it to my parents. Oh, I can't believe you went shopping all by yourself in this country. Oh, that's so amazing. What did you say? And I said, well, I just practiced. I'm only looking, and they left me alone. My dad, the Croatian speaker, says, no, I mean, like, what did you say? And I said, Samogladam. My dad's shoulders went back. His eyes flew up, okay? He said, well, what you should have been saying is Samo gledam. That means I'm only looking. What you were saying, don't memorize this, friends. What you were saying was, I'm only hungering sexually for you. So I'm glad they left me alone. I'm lucky, okay? I had gone around, well, I won't even just, I'd gone around, I never went shopping again for crystal in that city, okay? I didn't go back in that area of the city for years, okay? One letter, one sound created a completely embarrassing cultural moment for me, okay? And I didn't even know it. I was clueless, okay? I pulled this story out for my students when they're starting to feel discouraged. Because if I could survive going around and saying, I'm only horny, around the city, okay, then probably you're not going to say anything worse than that. And of course, I have continued to say things that were that embarrassing. So what I would like you to do right now is with a partner, I'd like you to think about a story that either you have told to students, where you have embarrassed yourself dramatically in front of others in an attempt to use the language in particular, be cultural, but using the language in particular, or perhaps in your discussion with a partner or with a small group, you can come up with something if you haven't. Turn to a partner right now and see if there's a story that you would ever be able to share with your students to help them understand how this goes. Those of you that are at the other sites, if you have a story that you'd like to commandeer the computer for and write for us so we can see it, that would be awesome at this point.
Yeah.
Yo prefiero las fuckers. En el partido. Las fuckers.
Does anybody here have a story?
Many.
Many? Oh, good.
No.
No.
You want to share the story?
Yo tengo la mejor historia.
No.
She had the best story.
Okay. Pick one of you. Come on up.
Entonces Nadia, venga. I haven't.
Anybody have a story here that they would like to share? Well, I've got the microphone unhooked. You want to? Come on now, I shared a really bad one, all right? Come on. You got a good story, it doesn't turn out well? You're still alive, right? Okay. This is one of the Washington Elite students, and she's got a story that she's still alive. Come on. For posterity.
Okay. When I was first studying abroad in Brazil. I'd only been studying Portuguese for 6 months, and I wasn't comfortable talking. But I was late for my flight, and I had to go through customs, so I missed it. And I was trying to say that I need to get on the next flight because I missed it, and they couldn't understand me. And so the man's like, no, I speak English, and he starts talking, but it didn't translate, and I didn't translate. So we're just standing here for like an hour, like, I'm trying to talk in Portuguese, he's trying to speak in English, and nothing's happening. And then after a while, I started crying, because I was like, I don't know what to say. And well, tears are a universal language. And I won a free plane ticket to go the rest of the way to Brazil.
Well, that worked out pretty well. You could try that technique. Pass that on to your students. That works well, too. Me, when I couldn't work it out, I just got yelled at. Okay. Screamed at in public in Barcelona, by the way. Who's my Barcelona? Oh, here you are, right here. In Barcelona, I point out. And I love Barcelona, but they screamed at me, okay? Anybody else here want to tell a story? No? Hope that you guys came up with a story there. The reason why I encourage you, if you don't already have a repertoire of stupid things I've done with my language, share that with your students on a regular basis. When you start taking their pulse, and you start realizing that they're feeling blue, when you've got a student who just looks like they're at their last ropes, take 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and tell a story of how you made a fool of yourself, okay? Linguistically or culturally. I have a huge repertoire. And it helps because it reassures students that this is the nature of language. They don't know. They don't know. And every other class that they're in, they're studying and they get graded, is not like this. This is like living in the world. And the world is an exciting and very dangerous place to be. And if you have some of that, that was such an important moment for me that I have in my house now, an official presentation by my dad. Those of you out there that probably can't see what this is, but I'll show you anyway. It is a piece of glass, it's not crystal, and it says, Norah L. Jones, Samo Glottum. I'm a star, okay? And I have this in my office because as I had it in school, because this reminded me, there's no such thing as perfect language. And I'm certainly not it, and I don't want my kids to be it. This keeps me humble, and it helps the students to remember that they're working with someone that makes a lot of mistakes, and they're welcome to do that too. And that welcome really helps. All right. Okay, we got a piece of paper and a pen out for a bit of a, this is such a quick quiz, it won't even hardly take any space. Okay, are you ready? Okay, Joey, pop one, please. All right, this is our quick quiz. Here comes something I want you to write the answer down. Think. Write it down, don't say anything out loud, okay? That's the deal here. Think, write it down, don't say anything out loud. Okay, first question. Language has been spoken for, now write the number of years you think. Language has been spoken for, and write a number of years. Everybody out there have some paper and pen? I hope so. I'm depending that you do. Write what you think is the number of years. What would we do without the Jeopardy thing? What would we do without it? Everybody can do it. All right, when you think you have it, share with a person near you what you wrote. Let's see whether or not you are sort of in the same ballpark. All right, what are some of the things you have out there? Those of you that are sitting around the computer out there in Connection Land, write a number of years down for us real quick so we can see what you're thinking. I'm not seeing you write. Can they write? I hope they're writing. Okay, what did you guys say here while they're writing theirs? What did you say?
1,000.
Pardon me?
1,000.
1,000 years.
Thousands.
Thousands. Oh, he's hedging his bets.
Yes,
Okay, thousands. Okay, we got some typing going on. And
19,000?
19,000.
No.
And 3 days.
Thousands and thousands, 19,000s, 2,000, many, okay, here comes Roanoke, all right, millions, okay, millions, forever, okay, now, okay.
The word is only
Okay,
5%.
well, it actually, and Elisa has something important that she's speaking of here, and that is, in a sense, it's untraceable, but there are 3 resources that I'm providing for you at the end of the page 9 of your handout. You don't have to look at it now, I'm just letting you know that it's there. That the Howard Chase English language is there. And also, the figure that I got is from John McWhorter, okay, who teaches now in New York. He was at Stanford for a long while, and he is an excellent linguist, and he says that for most part scholarship shows 150,000 years. Again, since earliest man, I think that's an excellent comment, but the fact is that we have examples of earliest man having, say, images and tools, but we don't necessarily know whether or not there was a language that was forming all of those things that were being shared. But this is a guess. Some guess less time, frankly, and some guess more time. But we can at least take at least one well-known and well-respected linguist's word here, okay? Let's pop the next question. Again, don't say your answer out loud. Write down what you think is true. Language has been written for X number of years. Written, okay? Put that down. As we think, I'm not even doing the Jeopardy tunes.
No idea.
Okay? Language has been spoken for 150,000 years, again, as far as we can tell. And language has been written for, okay, share with a person nearby. And those of you that are in the other campuses, you can write down what you think. So you can join us here in guessing
I think the first time
or the knowledge, excuse me, I shouldn't say guessing. There are people like here that may be teaching this course when things were first written.
Do cave paintings count?
Excuse me?
Do cave paintings count?
No, it has to be written language versus image.
But what about images as language?
Now, you know, the idea about images as language, certainly they are expressing something, but for the point of view of speaking about language, we're talking about the representation of words, be it in ideograph form. So if, in other words, if there's an oxen tree, okay, we might wonder whether or not they're counting oxen or something like that, but we don't necessarily know if we could say something out loud that was a sentence structure like that.
But isn't that like a very Occidental approach to language? I'm sorry.
No, absolutely, that's very good. She's commented, isn't it a very Occidental approach to language? We are including ideographs in the idea of a written representation of language here, so it's not just about alphabetic, okay, here, but it's actual representation of language versus a visual representation of an animal. So if it looks like an ox, it might be actually a symbolic representation of a word that means ox, but this is when we are pretty darn sure that that physical representation is in fact signaling a word rather than just an expression of, say, an understanding of shape. And so because language is lost a lot in the mists of time, where that bridge is actually crossed is up for grabs here. And we have, for example, the 100, well, I think 100 probably would be funny, 149,000, okay? If 149,000 were written here, meaning that written language comes immediately after spoken language, again, how exactly one begins to define when an image becomes a spoken word
When
remains
it
to be
tries
seen.
to communicate a concept instead of an
Right.
image.
A spoken concept that is understood by a negotiating partner. So that part of that definition comes in. Let's pop and show what at least linguists say. 6,000, okay? Pretty close? No? How did you guys do out there? Did you get about 6,000? Okay, so what this means, why are we doing this while we're talking about inhibited language learners? If language is based in being a human being, if we use it from the very beginning of our lives as babies to connect and to belong, okay, and if spoken language is the way that language has been for all but the last 6,000 years, then we should at least be aware of that as we approach our students and approach their encouragement. Encouragement because the literacy aspect of language may be one of the things that's inhibiting the students, and we may want to watch how we approach so that we can, as it were, come in the back door to address these things. Joey, I'm going to be popping several things at you fairly rapidly. We think that when students walk into the classroom, a lot of folks, a lot of us, hand them a book. Here's your book. They open the book. The language is the book that's in front of them. It's the written expression of what they're about to do. But in fact, language is actually about the ear. Okay? We've just seen 144,000 years, if you take John McWhorter's figures, which I think we can at least take as a pretty good benchmark. Difference. Okay, Joey? Here's another thing that students come in thinking. Students come in thinking that language is something that they just discover. It's complete, it's finished, it's like a package in the closet, they pull it out, they take a little piece here, a little piece there, a little piece there. It's a finished product that can be found. But in fact, it's actually a construction. Language is always growing, always changing, always new, always being developed, and especially in the case of young people, always being rearranged. If we allow students to understand that that language is not something that they just discover, but it's actually something that is invented and built together with other speakers, this gives them a stake in belonging and understanding. It also helps them to ask questions like, you know, well, how come you just said it like that when yesterday you said it like that? Because there's two ways of saying it, and here's another way of saying it. Wait a minute, didn't you just say that you're supposed to say it like... This keeps them understanding that there are multiple ways of saying things, and then if they say something quote-unquote wrong, as in to say a native speaker would not find that a communicable construction, you can say that. You've gone beyond the bounds of that which would be an easy communication event for a native speaker. But you can rearrange within parameters because you are building on it, and that is an encouragement as well. They've got to build a foundation and build up, but so do native speakers. Next. Here's another thing that students come in thinking. This keeps them inhibited. They think that they are going to have to be the conquering hero, okay? I'm either going to get it or die, okay? And if they don't get it right away, they're going to die, okay? And they do die. They just give up. And they're going to climb that mountain and solve that problem and reach that peak, and they'll be done. Done! But language is actually more like a slow, steady journey on a river that we do together. We don't do it alone. We don't have to be the conquering hero. So we need to depend on each other. Now, in our culture, I mean by U.S. culture, or at least the majority culture, we are very individually oriented. We expect students to earn their own grades. I bet you all of us have read the stories about how Navajo, for example, like to work together because people are supposed to work cooperatively, okay? We have to provide a cooperative experience for students as well as teaching them that in this culture they expected to have individual performance. But they don't have to be the conquering hero. Okay, next picture. Here's another thing. They expect, okay, that this will be an adventure, that this will be glorious, that this will be dramatic, and that there will be a hero, okay? And that everything will, you know, just come to this glorious achievement. But in fact, instead of having rowing with Washington, okay, it's more like going over a waterfall, okay? It's much more scary than the triumphant crossing of the Delaware. It's much more like going over a waterfall, and even, it's like carrying your own canoe to get there, okay, it does not always feel exciting. Helping your students, in whether it be visually or through your attitude, to understand some of these aspects. Language is mostly spoken, so get the ear tuned up. Language is not discovered, but invented over and over again. And language is something that we're going to do together over a period of time. When they understand that and hear it from you again and again, because they'll forget, okay, then it makes a big difference. Okay, these are the parts that go together. Alrighty. So the two secrets are, you want to let you share with your students so they can take risks, are: 1, language is sound; 2, writing is a convention. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to do the first 2 activities, okay, the body one that I was talking about and the mind one. First, the body one, language is sound. Are you ready? Language is sound. Pop that button there, sir. Okay, here we have an erudite diagram. Let's all, nah, forget about it. Pop it again. Let's have fun. Okay, what I'd like you to do is, over there, wherever you are in the various places, I'd like you to stand up, and I'd like the folks here to stand up, okay? And Joey's going to make sure that we don't, like, block the camera or stuff, and we can watch people or whatever. You can show other folks, okay? All right, now what I'd like you to do is, now, and I want you to do this nice and loud, okay? And none of this weenie stuff here. I can't monitor you out there, so I'm going to have to trust you to do this, okay? First of all, I want you to understand that this is something I want you to do with your students, okay? I'd like you to put your hands on your face. Now already, by putting your hands on your face, you're doing more than your students would like to do. You're going to have to force them to do this, because there'll be some students that will never put their hands on their face until you say, put your hands on your face. And as soon as you begin working with them, they're going to forget. So be patient, but do this with your students. You ready? This is the mouth. Meet your mouth, okay? Ready? Now go, ah. 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 Nice and loud. Ah. 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 You guys can hear me there, I guess. Let me know by writing if you can't hear me. Ah. 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 All right, ready? Ah. Eh. Ah. Eh. Ah. Eh. By the way, I'm doing Spanish sounds for the moment, but it's all excelente. But on the other hand, we can do this with any, because this is the nature of vowels that we're doing here. The nature of vowels. Ready? Ah, eh, ah, eh. Ready? Now let's watch this. Ah, eh, ah, eh, ah, ah, eh, ah, eh, ah, eh, eh, ah. Keep it up for a minute. Go. Ah, eh, ah, eh, ah. What's happening? What's changing? Sounds are changing. How come they're changing? What's happening? You're holding your face. Hold your face. What's happening? Do this. Ah. Eh. Do you see? Ah. Eh. What's happening? What is happening? Feel what's happening? Your jaw. You see how your jaw is going up and down? Ready? That's all. Ready? We'll go. Ah. Eh. Ah. Eh. Ah. Eh. Ah. Eh. See how that works? Your students don't get it either until you do that. Okay? They don't get it until you do that. Now let's do this one. Ah, eh, o, ah, eh, o, ah, o, ah, o, ah, o. What's happening now? Ah, o, ah, o. What's happening?
It's a muscle.
The muscles of the mouth. You notice how you're rounding it. Is your jaw moving much? Not much, right? Not much. Let's do it. Ready? Go. Ah, o, ah, o, ah, o, ah, o. See how your jaw is pretty still, but you're rounding your lips? Okay? You get that? All right. Ah, eh. What creates a difference there? The jaw. How about this? Ah, o, ah, o. What's making the difference there? The mouth shape. All right, let's do this now. Ah, eh, e. Ah, eh, e. What happened when you did e? Where did the jaw go? Went up yet again. Ready? Ah, E. Now, by the way, there are several different reasons why we're doing this. First of all, is you want to introduce your students to their mouths. Okay? You want to introduce your students to how they make their sounds. Here's another thing. I have large classes, or I had when I was in the classroom. I had 25, 30 kids in the classroom. Maybe some of you have even more than that, okay? You cannot actually hear what the student in the back is saying unless, of course, you walk over and you stand next to the student in the back, in which case the student's in the front, or like you can. But I'll tell you what, you can tell a mile away when a student, now I'm going to use Spanish again as an example, when a student says, él habla, ella habla, yo habla, by the jaw position and the mouth position. And I tell my students that. I can tell what you're saying by your mouth shape. And on top of that, from the happy point of view, is you can adjust what you're saying by adjusting the mouth shape, okay? So, E. See, now people are not putting their hands on their face, and this happens in the classroom. Make sure they do it. E. Now, there you go. U. Ri. U. Ri. U. Ri. U. Ri. U. Ri. U. Have fun with this, okay? The kids love this part, right? I mean, we usually do cheers like E, O, U. No, I think you've probably done that too. But here we go. E. U. 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 E. U. Let's do French. E. U. E. U. Not U. 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 E. U. E. U. E. U. O. Okay, so good. E. Here's your jaw. Now O. U. When you go O. U. You have rounded lips and your jaw goes up. Help your students to get the feeling for how would these work. People are taking pictures here. Let's do silly things. Ready? Yeah. You take pictures over there too. All right. The idea is that what you want the students to know is that their mouth is forming the sounds. You also can help to learn this way because you help your students to learn this way for this reason. Two things, two examples of what was happening. I was once observing a person in some other part of the country, okay? And I watched as this wonderful, well-meaning teacher, okay, was attempting to help her students to understand the Spanish conjugation. In this case, I believe it was hablar, okay? And the student came back, having studied hablar the night before, okay, and said, yo habla. It makes sense. Tú hablas, él habla, nosotros hablamos. It makes sense. Yo habla, right? So, but here's what the teacher did. Again, well-meaning, but she goes, no, 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 yo hablo. And I thought, wow, Shazam, okay? As soon as she gets to the preterite, not like the student's going to remember that, okay, the whole way, but as soon as she gets to the preterite, there's going to be a sense then that stress is not a clear marker in Spanish, okay? So by using this exercise, several things happen. First of all, it's goofy enough that everybody gets embarrassed. Yes, there are some students that are mightily embarrassed by that. We then make sure that everybody's facing me, that I say things like, I'm the stupidest one here, you know, whatever, take the thing off. Just do it often enough that it kind of desensitizes. But generally speaking, even my painfully shy ones have come around after a while to recognizing that nobody's really doing strange things outside of what they're doing, okay? I also invite my students, and you should invite your students, to go home and torture their parents with this, okay? E, O, U, okay, in front of the mirror, in front of their parents. It's great stuff, okay? This allows you to be able to say to a student, no, 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 it's yo hablo, yo hablo. So this helps them to understand the use of vowels as markers for meaning, which we're going to talk about again in just a little while. It also helps you to be able to watch when students have trouble hearing. For example, that samogladam story I told that story to a level 2 class, and there was a young lady in there that didn't get the joke. And so I said, gladam, gledam, gladam, gledam. She didn't get the joke. So I got closer to her. I went, gladam, gledam. She didn't get the joke. I went, ah, eh. She couldn't hear the difference. I would have not flushed that out if I hadn't been working with these vowel sounds. So, first thing to do, as far as working with inhibited students, is get them to understand the nature of how the body works. Give everybody the same clue. Again, level the playing field. Make everybody look goofy together and have fun together. You can sit down now, yeah. You can sit down now. You've probably been sitting down for a while right there. But anyway, the fact is that you're going to want to get them to practice their mouth sounds on a regular basis. I do it as a warm-up a lot in class. I do it as a grand finale, the last minute and a half of class. It is until you have worked with it so that your students then are being able to tighten up and understand where their mouth position makes language, hard to express how important this is for helping students to understand their control of their bodies. So the first thing is the vowels. Okay, Joey, you'll pop the next one. The next thing is to meet the vocal cords. Okay, so now some of you are taking notes. I'm going to let you finish taking notes, but what I am going to ask you to do is watch up here, and we may end up having to stand back up in just a few minutes. Okay, and I'm going to have to put my glasses on to see this because we didn't write it out. All right, don't do anything until I signal you clearly, my friend. All right, you ready? Let's go. Everybody, ready for doing this? Go ahead. Can you see this? This looks funny, doesn't it? This is going to be great on the video. Now. Ready? What's the only difference? What's the only difference?
Vocal cords.
Right, the vocal cords are sounding. These are voiced versus an unvoiced consonant. You can go ahead and pop that first one, Joey. Here is the F and V. F and V, okay, are the same phoneme, one voiced, one unvoiced. And I have those little bars there to show that it's kind of like, I hate to say it, but it's going to be kind of like fake, okay, International Phonetic Alphabet, all right, because I'm going to not use all the fancy terms necessarily, okay? These are the same things. You want to get your students, okay, to meet their vocal cords and to meet these important consonants. The consonants I'm sharing with you are the key to several things about helping inhibited learners to feel more comfortable. All right? Next one. Ready? Here we go. Can you hear out there? Too small to see. Can we zoom in on Nora's face? Can you do that? Sure. Joey can do anything. All right? Joey can do anything. All right, here we come. I'm going to look at you. Am I looking at it? If I look this way, am I looking at them?
Yeah.
Okay, ready? All right, the first one was, as you can already know. Do it. Okay, now this one is. Ready? Can you see that? See that? Can you see that better? Closer? Boy. How about that?
Oh,
No, he can do
the
that.
camera. Go to the
Okay.
camera.
Okay, go towards the camera.
Yeah.
All right, but I need to work with the folks here too. But
That's all right.
I'll just trip over this. Ready? I'll just stand here for a minute. Ready?
There you go.
B,
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 B, B,
b,
B,
b. What's the diff?
No.
Yeah, what?
I was just remembering. My mom used to do that when I was learning to speak. Actually.
Your mom used to do that
Yeah.
when you were learning to speak. All right.
Wow.
Have we hit it? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Ready?
have this memory now.
B. Ready? B. No. Don't pop too much that p.
Not too
Ready?
much, but okay.
B.
I get it.
B. B. Difference is
Lips.
voice. You'll pop the next one. Okay? This, again, voiced and unvoiced. I'm going to walk back. Don't go yet. We're going to do 5 of these. Hang in there with me, Joey. Okay? Joey's, by the way, is popping this button because my normal clicker doesn't work when it's being broadcast in Adobe. So Joey is being my incredible clicker man, as well as arranging everything else that's going on here. You ready for the next one?
Yes.
This is to teach your students now. You ready? Good.
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 Good. Good. Good.
Good.
Good.
Good.
Good.
You can pop it up there. What's the difference? Voiced and unvoiced. You can go ahead and you did. So good. I can look over his shoulder. Ready for the next one? Here we go. S, 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 z, z, z. Do it again. What's the difference? Voiced and unvoiced. Here's the next one. Ready? Vocalize that and you get duh, duh,
Oh, dear.
duh. You did it, didn't you?
And then
Duh, duh,
the
duh. All right? Now, these pairs are ancient, okay? Now, I know I am speaking to primarily Western languages here. So my friend that is here, or at least one friend that is with Japanese, one of the things that I want to be sure to say to you is I cannot purport to speak about the nature of some of the Japanese consonant productions, but the idea here of the voiced and unvoiced pairs is universal. So if you've got anything you can share with me about your understanding of Japanese with relation to these, I'd be like forever grateful. Thank you. That's an official invitation, and I appreciate it. When you share, go ahead and pop the next one if you would, please. When you share this consonant grouping, you should actually have this up on your wall somewhere, in my opinion. Because when students recognize that these are the key consonants that make a huge difference in their lives, okay, it is absolutely amazing what's about to come, because they become then familiar with their mouths. So do your magic mouth. Ah, e, I, o, u, ah, u, ah, u, ah, e, I, u, ah, o, ah, o. Play around with it and ask your students to play around with it and play around with it on a regular basis, and also sensitize this to them. If you could pop the next slide, if you would, please. If you're a linguistic junkie, I've actually been called a hand, like one of the students said to me, could you please stop teaching us so much linguistics and get on with the Spanish? I'm like, ooh, yeah, ouch. Okay. So, but I still think that it's important for students to understand the idea that there are sounds. These are not the names of the letters. We are not talking D here. We're not talking D. We're talking D. We are not talking the letter T here. We're talking T. Just like when we teach such as Spanish, we're not talking the letter H here. We're talking about silent or h, okay? Or J is a label, but h is the sound. In Croatian, the phoneme for that is J, okay? So you got to know what you're talking about here. But understanding some of this yourself and helping them to understand how their mouth works, absolutely brilliant. Share the magic mouth with them. Okay, so that's activity, if you will, activity base number 1. Language is the body. Teach them about the body. Level the playing field and have fun. Enjoy that, as well as signaling them how to work with it. Okay, Joey? So, right now we focused on that the individual, okay, sound, body, all right? Now let's pop on to the next one. We're going to take a look now at how language is also about the brain and about community, okay? So, what are you going to share with your students? Bang! Let's go for it, Joey. That bang is for Joey. Okay. Share with them that writing is a convention. Share with them. Tell them that word convention means people made it up as they go along. It's not part of what happens in your body. Writing is a construction. We decided to use these symbols. Pop the next one, if you would, please. And one more. Thank you. wherever we go in the world, we have an opportunity then to see that people have made different decisions about conventions. When we're about to do with our second activity to help the inhibited learner is we're about to give them the key to understanding some conventions that work. In this case, I am going to propose specific ones that I use for my students in French and Spanish. And again, folks that are working in German and Japanese, I know that you are going to be able to see when we're about to work with this, how you can arrange something like this for your language or whatever other thing might be. In Japanese, consider voice and unvoiced to be the same letter. Okay, thank you very much for that, and I'd love to capture that if at all possible. I hope somebody wrote that down. I'll definitely capture it as we go forward. All right, so with written conventions shared with students as conventions, we have what I consider to be the best of both worlds. Okay, go for it. First of all, having students understand this, and this chart was always up in my room. I suggest that you put that chart up there because when students realize that historically speaking, and again, my apologies to thank you very much for emailing that information to me. I appreciate that. When students begin to realize how phonemes connect historically in the language that you're teaching, and in this case I'm working again with Spanish and French primarily, although Romance languages in general, German also in this, the p, b, f, f, okay, are actually phonemes that historically are linked, okay? K, g, and h are related to each other. D, t, historically related to each other. Not just voice and unvoicing, but historically connected. Okay? Next, Joey. This allows phonemic patterns. Now, I notice that in a lot of textbooks, and a lot of us have worked with these things, we say, oh, these are like cognates, or here's when you have dad, you have the ty ending, okay, or something like that. And we do those things. My suggestion is that, well, not undermine that, but I think that if you give your inhibited students, all of your students, but inhibited students especially appreciate this, some of this language history enough for them to say, oh, D's and T's, they can begin to guess. Sociedad. What happens if I change that to a T instead of a D? Sociedad. Oh, maybe. Now, your better guessers, even inhibited ones, will get it. Your other ones will still be slow about it, but that's like one of those things. See how febrero, février, February, there's the b, v being historically the same. Students can begin to see patterns without us having to point it out to them because they know the letters. Okay, Joey. Also, wonderful French. I love French, and this I attribute to having been in a history of French language class with my daughter when she lived in Rennes. And I think I had more out of that class than she did, okay, talking about French phonemic reduction, which sounds so much like a cooking school, you know? Okay, so we have Latin and Italian and Spanish, which tend to keep up the multiple syllables, okay? So we have mater, mother, madre, German, mutter, and then we take a syllable off for French, mère, all right? So when French students know that phonemic reduction has taken part, they can begin to guess what syllable might be missing. When they become more competent guessers, they become less inhibited because they can guess wrong along with all of their friends. And you'll help them. Next one. Phonemic signals for meaning we're about to explore in more depth. But understanding that when phonemes are switched to signal meaning, that students can guess well with that. Okay, here we go. Take a look at this chart for just a second as we're continuing to explore together. Again, you see that the phonemic patterns that are listed here help to what I consider speed vocabulary building. Okay, knowing that prueba, that b and f, are actually related, doesn't take long then to at least memorize, even if they couldn't have guessed. Now, it turns out that the U and the E is also a split from a base sound, so on top of it, we could go even back even farther. We'd end up with the O that originally was, and it's almost always exactly proof. But then that's historical linguistics, and we don't have time for that, okay? But if the students understand that B's and V's and F's and things like that work together, okay? How would you explain to a child what a phoneme is? I would say, rather than, what I do with my 8th graders and 9th graders is I say things like, I'm about to share with you a basic sound. We're just not going to label it. We're not going to name it, we're just going to make it as a sound. Then for the kids that can understand it, because some of those younger learners like that, I say it's called a phoneme, but I don't like quiz them on it. And I say, here's a sound. Ready? The base sound is B. Ready? B. And then we play around with the sound. We play around with the sound. Nothing more or less sophisticated than that. Did that answer your question? We'll find out in a minute. I really like the last two. I really like this again, this bibere, beverage, beber, boire. Legere, lecture, leer, lire. Okay? But as long as you know that that is the nature of the way that the language flows, and you know those patterns of those related letters, this will help students to understand better where these words are related. Okay? We can show them lecture, but we can show them also where these other sounds come from. So another tool to help students to guess better. Okay? All right, next. I'm going to share these magic boxes with you, okay? The magic boxes are actually in the handout, which I understand now everybody have, pages 11 and 12, okay, the magic boxes. And here's how to use the magic box. My suggestion would be that you provide a magic box to every student in your classroom and put it up on the wall, okay? And here's why. These, again, this is going to be in Spanish and French. Those of you in German, those of you in Japanese, I know that you're going to be able to come up with something like this. And this is not designed, I want to make sure I say this does not answer every spelling activity that goes on. This does not solve every problem out there. What this does do, though, is break through the key spelling things that make students that are inhibited in their writing or feeling like they're getting behind in their ability to understand what they're reading and sounding it out to learn the language. This, I guarantee you, it solves it. I guarantee you it solves it. The key word, the key letters, see the sounds here in the Spanish one, is k, okay, s, g, and h, okay? Those are key sounds which relate to a pile of Spanish spelling. You can flip it to the next one, but we'll come back to Spanish. The next one, the same things, again, this is the nature of history of language, which we don't go into, we don't need to with the students either. K, g, s, and zh, okay? Okay, go back to Spanish for just a second, since a lot of the folks here, okay? Again, those of you that are in German and Japanese and others, be thinking about what this applies as we play with it. Here's what we want to do, okay? We want to take that phonemic sound and we want to show how it sounds with letters. So what I'm going to ask you to do, Joey, is I'm going to ask you to back it up one second. I want you to take it off of that so you can't even see that. Don't even look at your chart. Look at me, okay? And those of you that are in out there, take a look real carefully. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Just want you to play around with some sounds with me. Ready? Let's go. We're going to go ga. 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 Go. Go. Goo. Goo. Ga. Go. Goo. Ge. Gi. Ga. Go. Goo. Wait for me. Ga. Go. Goo. Ge. Gi. Now you have a piece of scrap paper? Get a piece of scrap paper, or the one you've been taking notes on, doesn't matter. Scrap right on the back of this thing, or if it's double-sided, pick something else. All right, now here's how I'm going to go. We're going to go with ga, okay? Now, we're going to say that sound. Now, for a moment, what I've done is I've put the chart up for you, but I'm going to show you what I do with my students so that you can help your students to learn it. If you'll go ahead and go to the next one. What I do is I go up and, well, I point to the ga, the G-A, okay, there, and I ask students to write it, ga. But I don't show them all, I just tell them, ga, okay? So write ga, all right, ga. Just write ga, okay? Now go back to the other slide. We're going to do this like we're in a class, ready? And which we should be doing anyway. Go, go, write go.
Go.
Go, okay? Write go. And then I'll show them the go, okay? And it's ge, ge, o, ge, o, ge, go, 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 okay? Go. All right? Now we have gu, gu, ge, u, gu, okay? Ge, u, gu. Now, before they write the next one, I help them to we back up a little bit, all right? Say, don't write anything. Ge, ge, ge. I spend a little time talking about the idea of hard and soft vowels, and if you feel comfortable with that, go ahead and do that at this particular point. But now I give them a writing convention, okay? Go ahead and pop that slide over. I ask them to write off of the magic box. Ge, u, e, and then we pronounce it ge, ge, and we leave it in the box. Now we have the same thing. We have gi. Okay, listen. Now I spell it gi. The writing convention for the sound g in front of e and e is G-U-E. That's a writing convention, and it is universal for Spanish. You know that if you're a Spanish teacher. Every time you see G-U-E, well, except if you've got some special markings, you're going to read it back. Ge. Teach them the writing convention, but keep it in the phoneme. Ga, go, gu, ge, gi. Do that methodically with every one of these letters. Again, French folks, you have the French box in front of you. German folks would love to hear how to do it with German. Japanese, the same thing. We have people wondering about the h sound. Here in Spanish, you have the sound ha, ha, like Hamas, right? Ha. So I say to them, here's how you write ha. Okay? We're going to do the letter jota, ah, ha. Okay, use the phoneme. Then, he, ah, he, h, h. Excuse me, I did that wrong with the phoneme. H, ah, h, ah, ha. Ready? Ha. Go ahead. Ha. Then you write ha. Now I do the same thing. Ho, 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 ho. Okay, then I have right. J-O. Then we pronounce again. Ho. We spend some time with this, because once they understand the concept of this, it saves days. Okay, ready? Hu, hu. But then we get to the he, he. Now again, here's where I say the magic box is not designed to solve everything. Do we ever see a G, J, and E together? Yes, we do. Okay, but for purposes of solving the problems in the classroom, the writing convention for he, we're going to say, is G-E. They're going to write it down, and we're going to pronounce it he, he. And then we're going to do he, he. Okay? And then we're going to see how we use that in just a second. Did that answer your question about the use of the sound h? You have a question.
Yeah, what's happening when you have the double sound, like the he and the he? You also have it with the J. So it's both
Right.
sounds. What do you do?
When you also have it, when the J is there as the spelling, that is the point where I say that this magic box is designed to solve a couple of writing universals that solve things for verbs and spelling. Okay, so we're going to play with that. So keep an advisement that this is not the 100% how to spell in Spanish thing, 100% how to spell in French thing. But in just a moment, I think you'll see its applicability. Okay, but I want to make sure that I point out that what you're doing is you don't just pop this at their feet and say, okay, let's memorize this. Okay, you're going to actually play with the sound, not letting them see the writing and walking them step by step through the writing convention. Now you'll probably end up doing this probably over a week or two. You're not going to do it all in one day. You're going to keep playing with it. I would suggest that you repeat it. I also say, once you've finished it, put it in their notebook, put it on the wall. Okay, Joey, let's go to the next one. And leave the next one. Okay, stop right there. Don't touch that sucker. Okay? All right, let's do this. You ready? You got a piece of scrap paper in front of you, right? Good. We're going to work with that scrap paper right now. Those of you that are Spanish speakers, if you see a picture of a young man with a piano, do you happen to have a particular verb that comes to mind? Tocar. Okay, now you notice that we're not seeing it. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. You are learners in the classroom, especially learners that are like, verbs coming up, I can't do this, Okay, inhibited learner, okay? We're going to do this, ready? Tocar, 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 tocar. I'm going to say it many times. You know the rule of 75? Okay. In order for a person to really hear, understand, and remember a word, they're going to have heard it and produced it for at least 75 times. So that's why that little baby goes, I want some milk, I want some milk, can I have some milk? Please can I have some milk? Daddy, get some milk, can I have some milk? And by the time they're 3 years old, they know milk, by golly, okay? We have to produce it. Have students repeat the things, not 75 times one day. But understand it takes a long time to get these words in, so they have to have these opportunities. Okay, so let's do this again. Tocar, tocar, tocar. Now, because students are already at a place where they're learning tocar, we're going to probably have a base of understanding of letters. Okay, so we've skipped past a little bit of introducing how you write a te. Okay, so if I say tocar, the students will likely be able to do this, especially if we've got that magic box on the wall and we say car, 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 tocar, tocar. Would you write tocar on your paper, please? Tocar, 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 tocar. All right? Based on what you heard, based on the magic box that's up on the wall, or in your hand, okay? Let's see if you spelled tocar right. Share with a partner, see what you wrote, see if you wrote the same thing. Do you think you might have gotten it? Since they're all Spanish teachers in this room, I hope they've gotten it all right, okay? And now we'll take a look. Let's see if you got it. Did you get it right? Did you spell it correctly? Okay, so that's a two-syllable one where students had already been introduced to the idea that the CA sound, that's the combination in Spanish writing, is ca. Because that's not self-evident to students. We teach them that. So, tocar, they may or may not get the R properly, okay? Now, as we begin to practice, okay, we practice things like this, okay? Ready to write on your paper? Okay. We know that the yo form ends how? O. Okay, so let's pronounce it. Tocar. Yo, toco. Let's do it again. Yo, toco. Yo, toco. Yo, 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 toco. Right? Toco, please. Right? Toco, please. All right? Now, what I did was I decided not to have Joey clicking all afternoon, so we're going to actually pull these together in a minute. So ready? Let's do the tu form. How do we got yo toco, tu, tocas. Let's say it again. Tocas. Say it again. Tocas. Repita. Tocas. Repita. Tocas. Repita. Tocas. 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 Right, tocas. You see, one of the things that, I know we do this in our class already, but by repeating it, but what we're doing is, we're not trying to just get the ending. We're actually chewing, as it were, on each syllable in there with the magic box present on our wall. Okay? Tocas. All right, let's do one more. Nosotros. Tocamos. Excellent. Tocamos, tocamos. Okay, you get the idea, right? You're going to do this about 10, 15 times, well, maybe a little less with students. Everyone, all oral, nothing written so far, okay? But they're writing it down, okay? They're writing it down. Now, for the purposes of speeding things up, let's talk about why the magic box works. As soon, here we go with the young lady who could not tell the difference between gledam and gladam, okay? I'm not going to take her to split Yugoslavia anytime soon. And that is when we get to, say, the subjunctive. How do we signal subjunctive? If students know that language is a spoken phenomenon, not a written phenomenon, then how do we signal to people that are not writing anything down for 144,000 years, okay, that this is not reality, but possibility? We switch the sound. Okay? Yo toko, that's fact. Que yo toque. Okay? Que yo toque. Tu tocas, that's fact. Que tu toques, that's not fact. So what's happening is we're helping all students, but especially the student that tends to be inhibited because of the nature of their sense of feeling overwhelmed, okay, to understand that they're in control of their mouth just as well as anybody else, okay? And then when we say, que yo toque, toque, say it with me, toque, 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 with the magic box in hand, write toque. Now what you have is to, que, spelled Q-U-E. It drives me up the wall when people say things in materials like, well, there's spelling changes and you've got to shift it to this, and like, ah! Sorry about screaming into your ear, guys, okay? The fact is, it's just a sound shift. And knowing that there's a writing convention for que that is Q-U-E in Spanish means that all you have to do is write toque. It's not that big of a deal. Que tú toques. Que nosotros toquemos. I'll pop the button there, would you, sir? Okay? It's all based on the k sound, which is on the chart, okay? And you can see how it's spelled. Q-U-E in the case of the magic box for Spanish. Let's take a look at the French one and show how that works. Okay, before he pops any of our buttons, for those of you that are French speakers, can you tell which verb is implied by this picture? Which one? Nager. Right, now we're before that. Okay, you ready? Now, using the French magic box, students, okay, using the French magic box, we're going to say, until your brains fall out, nager. Do it with me. Nager. Do it again. Nager. Again. Nager. Nager. Now using the magic box, write nager. 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 Now, let's see how it works. Share with the person. See if you got the same thing. Share with the person. See if you got the same thing. All right? Okay. All right. Let's see if you got it. Joey's going to show it. Did you get it right? What happened? Yeah, I did. Okay, let's go off. Okay. Now, what would happen is, as a French student, you may or may not, my dear inhibited student, you may or may not have remembered that infinitives have R's, okay? But if you forgot, then your companions remind you. And now we have yet again, at least the J sound is in there for this particular example. Nager. All right, now, can you imagine? You can jot them down real fast so we can go through this quickly. Je nage. Okay? Je nage. As a French student, you will know that when I get to the tu nages, there's going to be an S at the end, okay? Now, here's where it comes, where the magic box comes in. Again, anytime folks say there's irregular spelling or you've got, it's like, ugh. We get to the new form, French folks. Here's the new form of nager. You ready? Let's pronounce it. Nageons. 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 Right. Nageons. Write it. Nageons. Use your magic box. Nageons. We want that j sound. Nageons. Nageons. How did we spell nageons? Okay, we're going to hold that thought. Same thing when we get to the imparfait, French teachers. When we get to the imparfait, we've got je nage in the present tense and je nageais in the imparfait. Je nageais. Now there's a whole bunch of spelling aspects going to this, but as Joey's going to pop the button, what we see here is that if students know from the magic box that the j sound with a G, okay, is retained by the GE, then nous nageons is spelled GE because that's the writing convention for a j sound. Otherwise it'd be nous nagons. That's what happens when we start from a literary side, nous nagons. No, we must insert an E. Why? Tell the students why. We must have an E in there because we don't retain the sound, and language is sound. The writing convention in French for je is GE. Okay? Okay? Nager, nageons. That nageons thing, the nous nagions, okay, lies at least why the pronunciation is true. I'm not solving everything here today, my friends, but that nous nagions thing, we actually say the I, and so sensitizing the ear to that does help. But the fact is that all the things that are supposedly learning how to spell stuff, like put an E in, no, just put the magic box and have the students spell it. Joey, if you'll pop the next one. Here's some more things. This jugar with the, again, the jugué. Now how to do the preterite. Jugué, jugamos, jugó. Makes sense as far as spelling. It's not an irregular spelling. It's not irregular. It's regular as can be. If you use the writing conventions, okay? Yo protejo, él protege. You see why I chose those in the box? That's why the spelling in those. Because it allows the students to explore tenses and moods. So when this is all of these examples and some more are in your handout. So take a little time to take a look at what's being said about this to practice these very things. Okay, there, Joey. Pop another one here. Yeah, that was supposed to have come first, actually. It's malfunctioning a little bit. Go ahead. Okay. Commençons. This is why we use the cedille. Okay, that's on the French magic box. Okay. All right. That's fine. Go on to the next one. Yeah, see, it's interesting. The pictures are supposed to come up first. Okay. All right. To help to overcome inhibition, then, what we've done so far is show students that speech is predictable. Speech is predictable. They can do it. Show them how writing conventions are controllable so they're not lost. Man, I mean, they're just overwhelmed with stuff. No wonder they shut up after a while. Remember that language is an invention, so they're competent guessers, and then they can create meaning on their own by the way that they write. When they realize that they can take some control in this, they start coming out of their shell. They start participating. And again, when you've leveled the playing field by playing around with the language, and not just battering ram it, okay? Now, we all like to play, but I mean play around with the sounds of language, play around with the body of language, play around with sensitizing people all the time to the way these things are written. Okay? Next slide, if we could, please. All right, now, our next goal is we want to connect students to the world. These inhibited students to the world, okay? Go for it. And we do want students to be globally proficient. Hi there, welcome back. Yeah. Okay? So, the first part of inhibition was to make sure that the body is understood. The second part is to play the game. So use your ladle, rat, rotten hut kind of thing. Work it out with them. Maybe you'll turn into a ladle, rat, rotten hut reciter too. And, you know, play other things like spoonerisms and stuff. Language, okay? Next. The tools that our students have at their disposal now, of course, thank goodness, include the digital connections of the students now to the world. So their community is much larger. So the activity that we're about to do that pulls together and allows them to be the center of life also allows them to be the center of global communication. This is a wonderful breakthrough for the 21st century. I'm very excited about it, okay? So we have our tools, we have linguistic and cultural awareness that we'll bring to them in the classroom, okay, which allows students to, and again, don't forget your story, tell them a story of making a fool of yourself, okay? This is powerful medicine. And finally, we're going to work on here on self-concept. All right, let's go to the next thing. What we're going to do is we're going to do a poster project. Now, your handout is chock full about this poster project, okay? So I'm going to talk it out right now. All we need to do is chat about it for a few minutes. I'll give you the basics, and then if you could, when you read about this, to get some more of the details to see what this activity is about. I'm calling it a poster project because, well, because I usually use poster board, okay? You're going to be much more advantaged, whoa, just lost my word there, didn't I? Imaginative than I am, okay? You're much more imaginative, but do not underestimate the power of having a physical product in the classroom that can be put in the closet or behind some chairs, okay? So think about the fact that you may in fact want to use a poster, but you also might want to use video and so forth, okay? When you're doing this project, this is the activity for the inhibited language learner to get them to be the center of life. We're going to start with the identity. Now I'm going to show you a student who lived this out, okay? First of all, go ahead and pop the next one if you would, please. You start with, have the students start with their name. Start with their name in a vertical design, okay? And even before they've gotten very far in the school year, before they've learned goodness knows, before they've learned all their adjectives, okay? I do this with them the first or second week of school. They set up a poster, okay? By the way, one of the things you'll see in my handout is this. They will make mistakes. They will start over 3,000 times. If they use a poster, get white out, okay? If they can't afford posters, get a loan, get some more posters and give it to them again. Let them start over. And also, I don't ask my students to keep them in a physical poster, like it has to be just a rectangle. I had students that have turned these into butterflies, baseball bats with balls hanging off of them, okay? Elephants, okay? Things that they like that are expressions of themselves. But the criteria here is there should be enough space to create multiple topics on this poster. Start with the identity of the student, okay? Now, what they do is they find adjectives that are, first of all, positive, okay? No beating up on yourself on this one. And be something that makes sense either by character, preferably by character, but it can also be looks, okay, that goes along with their name, their letter of their name embedded somewhere in there. This is why you can use multiple media, but again, if you don't mind, I'm just going to talk as if you were using a poster, and you're going to think of more imaginative ways of doing this, if necessary. By using adjectives then that are arrayed down, the student, now this is in the target language, so the first thing that's happening in my French or Spanish class is I'm helping the students, as they're working on this, to get the adjective in the right form to go along with their name. So one of the first things that happens is the female students understand that there are such things as gasp, feminine forms of adjectives, okay? And so do the guys that are sitting next to them, because they're about to then present this name. I gave them the phrases. If the material hasn't had it already, they'd say, hello, my name is, I am, and then they recite it. Hello, my name is Norah. I am nice, studious, strong, athletic, and honest. Okay? All right? I've just presented. Thank you. Goodbye. Then they sit down. The next student stands up. This is how they get to know each other if they don't already know each other well in the class. They're also doing this base in Spanish or French here before they've been formally introduced to it, potentially. Okay? But it's doing it on the poster. The poster then gets put to one side. By the way, these letters, they can do it in any colors, any designs. They can paste things on here. I have kids that cut out magazine strips. I have kids that do glitter. But the main thing is, by the time they get done with this name, okay, the name here should be clearly seen, which is why I have the red letters. Because one of the aspects of this poster is that students will be able to interview the poster when the person that made the poster is not there. I could walk a student up to this poster and say, ¿Quién es? Who is this? And have the student say, this is Norah. You know, she is strong, athletic, whatever. They can, the poster at all stages can be interviewed. Okay, next one if you would please, Joey. Every context that you work with in a class at any level, okay, I've worked with these posters from levels 1 through 5, okay, are game for this poster, because what happens is each time you come up to a context and you begin to break it down into various components, and you ask students to then create something or present something, it is part and parcel of what can go on the poster. So for example, if a student is going to school in the school context, and we want to talk about school supplies, we've all done, I believe, the secret sack, right? You have a sack and the students pull the things out of the sack. In my sack I have a ruler. In my sack I have a pencil, okay? What they have on their poster then is their school schedule ultimately and pictures of their supplies. And one of the things that you'll see in the writing about this is there should be, outside of this name and the label of people's names in a family tree, there should be no words on this poster. I've learned that the hard way, okay? Students will read off their poster if we ask, if they have them write. So for a student then, what you're doing is, friends, is every time there's a context and you have a student do a mini presentation about that and have a physical representation that goes up on the poster to remember that, okay, then what you have is an opportunity for that student to revisit. For example, my name is Norah. I am, I go to Russburg High School. I have 6 classes. For my classes, I have my knapsack, my computer, my dictionary, okay. They can look at that poster and recite back all that they've learned up to that point, if you desire to have them do that, okay? The fact is that what I do is I have students memorize poetry, and then they do pictures based on that poetry. They write literature, and they put it on the poster. That poster is a cumulative, growing product. I can do it for the whole year, or I can have a poster project that's just designed to work with, say, the context of environmentalism or family. But for younger, early learners, my suggestion is that you work with it for a longer stretch of time, a semester at least. Okay? Let's go on to the next one. Again, all the contexts are fair game. Everything that you would normally study, break down into some components like you do when you have students do presentations. And again, students are interacting while you do this. Okay, next. I am the center of all of it. Now folks, for the inhibited language learner, what happens here is this. They are given permission to be the center of attention. They are given permission to talk about themselves over and over again in a perpetual, permanent product that can be presented all year long and that others can get to know them in. So their competencies are grown incrementally and captured. And then they get a chance to revisit it and speak about it again. So whether it be school, family, and seasons, go ahead, Joey, or society and professions, okay, it all works. Let's go to that video, please, of Sarah. I'm going to show you a brief bit of Sarah, one of my students from a while back, who was, well, she came out of her shell, shall we say. I'm going to let Sarah talk here for a little while. And can I talk over her? Can I talk over her? Does that work okay? Can you hear? Because those of you that don't know French are not really understanding. But what I'm doing is, well, I'm going to be quiet for just a second. You can watch some of her fluency. This is French 2. She's talking about her friends. Now what's happening is now at this particular point she's going to read her name off. Now this poster is two-sided, so you see that she's got a lot of things on this side. She's going to flip it over in just a few minutes. Now she's doing her house, talking about her house. Now each of these items They studied thoroughly, they did thoroughly, and so forth, and she's placed it on this poster. She's already presented it a couple of times, and now this is the final exam. The poster is the outline for everything she wants to talk about, and she can go in any order she wants. It's up to her. She's not reading off of anything because it's all pictures. Okay, I think we can pop her off. Because Joey, yeah, okay. I think that's enough. She talked for 5 minutes, okay? I showed you about a 1 minute and 45 second or 2 minutes clip there, or Joey did. So what happened here is she was able to talk. Now what's happening while she's doing this in the classroom is students are taking notes on who she is. So with this particular project, what I have is students that are being asked questions, students that are taking notes on these things, so they're going to be graded about how well they've listened to the specifics about Sarah in this case, or whether they can write a little paragraph about her. So everybody is paying attention because they themselves are depending on grades. Next slide, if you would. I think actually I've gone past that one. Next one, if you would, please. Go ahead. Make it name-centered. Avoid written words. Go ahead and click these. Begin the context in class. They are going to work outside of class, but sometimes they work in class if you work on these as a poster. Providing time for repair. Go ahead. Encourage personalization. Like I said, turning it into a baseball bat or a butterfly is kind of fun. All the communication modes are divided with this. One of the things that Sarah had on her poster there was her conte de fées, her fairy tale that she had written. During the year, students could come up and read her fairy tale, okay, and take notes on the fairy tale that she had written, okay? Next. Oops, it's 6:01. Rats. I'm going to show you these rubrics, and then we'll be done. The rubrics are actually also in the handout. One of the things that we want to do when we're doing this is to make sure that the rubrics can include being able to be heard. Okay, and I also coached forensics speech stuff, so I wanted the students to be very self-confident. So I kept putting things in my rubrics like eye contact and sense of body posture, because I taught them some of those things. When students were doing a great job with it, I took off the rubric and just concentrated on the content. But including in the rubric, the ability to being able to hear and speak confidently helps students to learn how to speak more confidently. And yes, I have students that have done complete meltdowns in front of me, and I've had to take them out in the hall, had to work with them and work them through it. So it's not been, you know, like there aren't students that aren't like frightened to death, but we've gotten through it because we work incrementally. This is level 1. Again, this is that secret sack thing I was talking about, a 20-point thing in which they are clearly being able to do an item in an indefinite article, and if you'll pop the next one, Joey. Here's the level 3. Now what I'm doing was I was using for my level 3s what I hope to do for a career, so I had to use subjunctive, and they had to ask their classmates questions during their presentation, to which the students then responded, and I videotaped all of it so that I had the grades for the presenter and for the responders. Okay? So this fluency and the connection with the audience is very important.
Professor, what do you do with the volume?
What do I do with the volume? If the student can't be heard, you mean?
That's right.
Yes, if they can't be heard, then what happens is, you notice it was like 2 points, okay? I give them a 1 or whatever, and then we sit down and say, this has got to be improved. And then we practice some more without the grading, okay? We do some more formative work, okay? Can we hear it? No. Can we hear it yet? Not quite, okay? And then I say, now the next time we're doing on a rubric, half of it's going to be your content and half of it's going to be able to hear it. And then project. But I have to teach them how to project and use their diaphragm, etc. But it's just critical for them to be able to do that at least within an environment. You will find yourselves in things that you will find important that you're going to want to put into that rubric. You know, clarity potentially, okay? Or if students have a particularly bad habit for some reason in your school. Again, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. All right. Though it begins with a baby, okay, we have hope. All right, go ahead, Joey. You punch the next 2. What we're looking for is confident young people, confident that they understand how language works and that they're competent at producing it and guessing it and growing it, and that they can belong, be it in their local school or globally, because they can begin with themselves, talk about themselves, and capture that so they bring hope to themselves. It's not all about me telling them you're growing, but they can feel it for themselves. They can see it for themselves. The handout has a lot of comments about interacting with students on this, and I will leave it on this slide for just a second and ask, does anyone in the other 7 places out there, do you have any questions out there? And do you have any questions here? And I know we're at 6 o'clock, so you may be like, I gotta get out of here. But just in case. Any questions here? No? Any questions there? We've got Lucille M. Brown, middle school typing. And again, I thank you for the person that's going to send me the Japanese thing. All good? You're welcome. Joe, if you'll punch that last button, I will thank you right back. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joy. Oh, there is a question. Will you share the PowerPoint with us? Yes, I absolutely will. And Dr. Kittner, sir, how can that best be done? It has been promised here by the power that be, okay, that you will absolutely get this PowerPoint, okay? You're very welcome. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you. All right. Here.